All right, welcome to the Story of Scripture in a Year. Welcome to our last week of month of May. We're in week 4, and this week we're looking at 1 Kings 12 through 2 Kings 3 in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, we're in John chapter 6 through John chapter 8. And so I want to work our way through the book of Kings and get to kind of a pivotal moment in the story of Israel. And this is the moment where the kingdom is divided. And so up until this moment, you have a united kingdom that all of Israel, the 12 tribes, they've come together underneath the rule and reign first of King Saul, and then King David, and then finally King Solomon. And you remember from last week, we talked about the prayer of Solomon. One of the elements of the prayer of Solomon is this, what's referred to as a conditional covenant, that if the children of David would continue to follow the ways of Yahweh, that a son of David would always sit on the throne of Israel. But if one of those sons disobeyed Yahweh, the kingdom would be torn from that household and that lineage. And so we actually find all this in the prayer that Solomon prays and just pleads with the Lord, like, let this be true. The irony is he himself is one of the first son to basically begin to create chaos in Israel because of the foreign idols that he follows after, which is a big byproduct of the different wives, the many different wives and the concubines that he ends up having, and how it says later in his life that he followed after the idols of his wives, which is such a devastating ending to the incredible beginning of the story of a king who did so much for Israel. Now, his son Rehoboam comes in, and when his son Rehoboam comes in, all chaos erupts. And so essentially what happens is Rehoboam comes in. There's a story that kind of happens earlier on where Rehoboam is like, hey, what do I do with the people of Israel? How do I lead them? And so Rehoboam, in verse 5, chapter 12, verse 5, Rehoboam replied, go away for 3 days and then return to me. So the people left, and King Rehoboam consulted with the elders who had served his father Solomon when he was alive, asking, how do you advise me to respond to this people? And they replied, the elders replied, today, if you will be a servant to this people and serve them, and if you respond to them by speaking kind words to them, they will be your servants forever. By the way, this is an echo of a New Testament. It's a foreshadowing of a New Testament idea that Jesus came not to be served, but Jesus came to serve. And here the elders are saying, listen, if you would be a servant, a king who is a servant to the people are going to serve you forever. Verse 8, but he rejected the advice of the elders who had advised him and consulted with the young men who had grown up with him and attended him. And he asked them, what message do you advise when we send back to this people who said to me, lighten the yoke your father put on us? And the young men who had grown up with him told him, this is what you should say to these people who said to you, your father made our yoke heavy, but you make it lighter on us. This is what you should tell them. My little finger is thicker than your father's waist. Now, there's all kinds of stuff that's going on with the Hebrew phraseology of this. I'm not trying to get blocked on YouTube, but it is likely, it's possible that this is a sexualized innuendo of Rehoboam in comparison to his father, which, just to get us into the mind of a son talking about a father that way, gets us into the depravity of the situation. So I'm not going to go too much further into that, but you can let your imagination go there, or you can not, because it's kind of gross. Anyways, although my father burdened you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with barbed whips. He's like, I'm going to make it worse. So Jeroboam tells all the people on the third day, this is exactly what happens. Basically, as a result of this, the kingdom divides. Verse 20, when Rehoboam heals all this, he gathers all his people. He's like, hey, I'm going to go take them back. But then this man of God, Shemaiah, comes and says, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. And so then you have a split. You have the only people that follow Rehoboam are the tribe of Judah alone. So this becomes the southern kingdom. So Rehoboam ends up becoming, of the divided kingdom, northern and southern, the first king of the southern kingdom. And then Jeroboam ends up becoming the first king of the northern kingdom. So this is where you have northern and southern. And now throughout the rest of the book of Kings, we're going to see the contrast, the comparison, the direction of the way in which these kings go. Hey, Humble Theology fam, I'm so excited to share with you my first solo Bible study, Finding Peace Through Humility, a Bible study through the book of Judges. Now, the whole idea of the book of Judges is that the people of God are spiraling kind of out of control. And the question we have is it possible for them to actually come out of the spiral? And it is. And kind of what I present throughout this Bible study is that the thing that's hiding in plain sight, that God is just consistently trying to draw the people of Israel back then and his people today to, is the ancient virtue of humility. The gift of humility is the gift of self-awareness, so that we can know who God is, we can know who we are, and so that we are powerfully equipped to know other people. And so I'm really excited about this Bible study. There are video lessons that go with it, and of course, this Bible study guide as well. You can get Finding Peace Through Humility on Amazon, wherever Bible studies are sold, and then I'll also put a link for it as well in the show notes. Blessings to you, friends. The vast majority of them are going to be negative. It's going to be evil kings. And every now and then you have a king who brings reform, who is a light in the darkness. But Jeroboam, in verse 25, who becomes the king of the northern kingdom, Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. From there he went out and built Peniel. Jeroboam said to himself, the kingdom might now return to the house of David if these people regularly go to sacrifice in the Lord's temple in Jerusalem. Basically, like, listen, we've got a problem. I'm leading the northern kingdom, but if the people still need to worship in the southern kingdom where the temple of God is, we're going to have an issue on our hand. And so the heart of the people will return to their lord, King Rehoboam of Judah. They will kill me and go back to the king of Judah. So the king sought advice. Then he made, look at this, so wild. He made 2 golden calves. When was the last time 2 golden calves were made? Oh, it was Aaron. Aaron made 2 golden calves. What is this an image of? This is an image of returning to the past idolatry of the people. Then he made 2 golden calves and he said to the people going to Jerusalem, it's too difficult for you. Israel, here are your gods. This is the exact same phrase that Aaron tells to the people of Israel as they had come out of Egypt, as Moses is on Mount Sinai. Aaron goes, Israel, here are your gods who brought you up from the land of Egypt. This is wild. He set up one in Bethel and put the other in Dan, and this led to sin. The people walked in procession before one of the calves all the way to Dan. It gets worse. Jeroboam makes shrines in high places and made priests from the ranks of the people who are not Levites, a direct disobeying of God's kind of setup for the Levitical priesthood. Jeroboam made a festival in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month, like the festival in Judah. So you see this counterfeit that's happening. He offered sacrifices on the altar. He made this offering in Bethel to sacrifice to the calves that he had made. He also stationed the priests in Bethel for the high places that he had made. He offered sacrifices on the altar he had set up in Bethel, and he goes on and on. So what we have is Jeroboam, who just leads the people into total chaos and disaster. Complete chaos into disaster. And it's all through idolatry. And I think that there is something here that's really important, that just because there is something that enticed us in the past, a past sin, we have to be careful that we don't become blinded to the idea that that past sin will never become a present sin again. We have to be aware of our own weakness, of our own frailty. And in so doing, I think it's really important that we're on the lookout for ways that we can end up compromising ourselves and compromising the Lord and his kingdom. As we jump into the New Testament, we get to John chapter 7, and we get to a passage of scripture that's so important. It's the promise of the Spirit of God. Verse 37 says, on the last and most important day of the festival, Jesus stood up and cried out, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Again, last week we talked about the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4, and Jesus is again talking about thirst, and he's talking about people who, when they drink from Jesus, that they won't experience thirst ever again. So here's Jesus in John chapter 7 saying, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. The one who believes in me, as the scripture has said, will have streams of living water flow from deep within him. He said this about the Spirit. Those who believed in Jesus were going to receive the Spirit, for the Spirit had not yet been given, because Jesus had not yet been glorified. So the idea here is that when Jesus is glorified in the ascension, then the Spirit of God would come. It's the fulfillment of the prophecy of Joel chapter 2, that when the fulfillment of this prophecy comes and the Spirit comes, the Spirit would no longer dwell upon the people of God at different times and different places for specific works. This is the idea of the Old Covenant. But now in the New Covenant that Jesus establishes, that he executes upon his glorification when he ascends into heaven, sits at the right hand of the Father, at this moment the Spirit of God would pour out. This is Acts chapter 2 at Pentecost. And now the Spirit would not just dwell upon, but the Spirit of God would dwell within. And this is so important, that you and I are people who live with the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God is within us. This is, and we'll get to it eventually, Ephesians chapter 2 and Paul's letters, that we're the temple of God. Well, what resides in the temple? God resides in the temple. We're the temple. What resides within us? The Spirit of God resides within us. We have no need, just as a side note, we have no need for magic and pharmaceuticals and DMT and ayahuasca and energy crystals and astrological exploration and New Age mysticism. We have no need for that. Why? Because we have the Spirit of God in us who is leading us. I hope this is helpful. Once again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. It'll be amazing. And then also, if you're listening on podcasts, the Theology Talk podcast on Apple or on Spotify, give us a follow there as well. And looking forward to finishing up. We're almost midway through the year. We're going to hit June here pretty soon, and really excited about finishing up the Bible in a year together, the story of Scripture in a year. Catch y'all next time.